Welcome back to Investing Talk Podcast. Our mission today, well, it's a big one. We're tackling the question, is United States Antimony Corp a good time to buy now? Now, this company operates right in that critical mineral sector, focusing on antimony, precious metals, things that are, frankly, vital these days. Think defense, think advanced batteries. Before we really get into the weeds, though, please remember to subscribe, like this discussion, and comment below. Seriously, if there's a specific company you want us to examine next time, just drop it in the comments. We definitely look at those.
And we really need to examine this one because you're basically looking at two totally different stories here. On one hand, you've got these persistent, pretty painful operational losses showing up in the latest financials. But on the other, there are these, well, significant speculative catalysts floating around, big market rumors, some high-profile events coming up, things that could potentially send the stock flying. So we have to weigh the cold, hard data against, the market buzz and what's scheduled to happen.
Okay, let's start with that grounding reality then, the financials. Looking at the 2024 filing, what's the actual picture?
Yeah, the actual picture. It's tough. Total revenue for 2024 came in at $7.8 million, which is actually down a bit, maybe 4% from the year before. And more importantly, they posted a net loss of $5.6 million for the year. But here's the thing, the really crucial point you need to grasp. Their gross margin was negative. Negative, meaning the cost of the goods they sold was actually higher than the revenue they brought in from selling them.
Wow.
Their basic unit economics are underwater. They're essentially losing money on, well, every pound of antimony they managed to sell right now.
Losing money on every single sale. That's quite something. So looking beyond the profit and loss at cash flow, how are they even funding that?
Well, they're funding it with capital they've raised, not from operations. Net cash from operating activities was negative $3.1 million in 2024.
Yeah.
And this isn't new. It reflects this ongoing cash burn, losses piling up over several years. That's where that dreaded going concern risk comes from.
Okay, hold on. Going concern. You hear that term? But for someone not buried in financial reports daily, what does that actually mean for the company's future? Is it as bad as it sounds?
It's pretty serious, yeah. It's basically the auditor's way of saying, look, we're genuinely worried this company might not have enough money to keep operating. Because the losses keep accumulating and they're burning through cash year after year. Management has to formally state that, look, without more financing or some kind of sudden dramatic improvement, there's substantial doubt they can continue for another year. It's a major warning flag.
That definitely sounds sobering. But, I was looking at their balance sheet, and I have to say I was a bit surprised. Given everything you just said, how come their total debt is so low? It's like $900,000 and all short-term borrowing. Plus, they ended 2024 with $3.2 million in cash.
Yeah, that's the kind of twist here. They aren't saddled with a bunch of old debt, which does give them some flexibility, some nimbleness. And they did manage to keep working capital positive, around $2.3 million. But while the balance sheet looks cleaner than you might expect, you have to remember, the company itself says it's still in the exploration stage. They aren't a mature operator, so they're really vulnerable to swings in commodity prices, antimony prices especially. And that lack of scale, well, it means they don't have much of a defense against the big mining giants.
Okay. So a somewhat shaky operational base, but not drowning in debt, giving them room to maneuver maybe. All right, let's pivot now. Because clearly the argument for this stock isn't really about its past performance, it's all about the future potential, right? This is where things get, well, potentially exciting, the speculative drivers. What kind of recent activity has grabbed the market's attention?
Well, over the summer of 2025, they seemed really focused on reliability, which is key for something like antimony. Back in July, they put out updates about their strategies to lock down antimony feedstock, sourcing from both Montana and Mexico, trying to diversify geographically, stabilize that supply chain. You need that reliable supply before you can even think about scaling up.
And it seems like that effort paid off pretty quickly in terms of visibility, didn't it? August was interesting. They reported Q2 results, sure, but the real kicker seemed to be the chairman and CEO, Gary C. Evans, appearing live on Bloomberg television. I mean, for a relatively small player in this critical mineral space, that kind of spotlight is huge. It puts them on the map for a much wider audience, including institutional investors.
Absolutely. And that visibility came after a pretty significant capital raise earlier in the year. Remember, back in April 2025, they pulled in about $17.6 million net from selling securities.
17.6 million. That sounds like a lot, especially for a company with barely any debt. But wait, didn't you just say they burned through $3.1 million in operating cash last year? Isn't that $17.6 million just like a temporary fix? Doesn't it just mean more dilution for existing shareholders down the line? Selling ownership to cover losses?
That's exactly the trade-off you as an investor have to wrestle with here. Yes, that cash injection pushes back the immediate going concern worry. It buys them time. Maybe, at the current burn rate, you could argue it buys them several years, perhaps up to 5. But yes, it came at the cost of diluting existing shareholders.
They're basically making a bet that one of these speculative catalysts we're about to discuss actually happens before that new cash runs out, hopefully justifying the dilution after the fact.
Right, so the clock is definitely ticking. Okay, lay out those specific near-term things to watch. The dates over the next 3 months, Q4 2025, that could really move the needle. The event-driven stuff. Okay, we've got 4 key dates or periods coming up that could definitely stir things up, regardless of what the company itself does day to day. First up, October 15th, 2025. This is more of a market mechanics thing, ETF rebalancing and index reviews.
Yeah.
If U.S. Antimony gets added to or dropped from some specialized critical minerals index, for example, that forces big funds using that index to buy or sell shares, creates volatility out of thin air, really.
Interesting. And what about updates on their actual financial health? Are we getting anything soon?
Yes. Key date number 2, October 31st, 2025. So that's when they're expected to release their Q3 2025 earnings. This one will be watched very closely. People will be digging into the numbers, looking to see if those supply chain efforts in Montana and Mexico started to, fix that negative gross margin. Even showing a less negative margin could spark a rally, given how bad it's been. Any sign of improvement there will be key. Then moving into November, around the 24th, that's key date 3, it often marks a period of significant institutional buying or repositioning. Funds sometimes clean up their portfolios or establish positions before year-end reporting. So another potential source of buying pressure. And finally, December 5th, 2025. That's when we expect their Q4 production forecast and a general business update. That sets the stage and expectations for how 2026 might shape up.
Wow. Okay. That is a very packed schedule for potential news and volatility in just a few months. Let's switch gears slightly again. What about the technicals? Looking at the chart as of late September 2025, does the price action seem to be anticipating any of this, or is it just sitting there?
Technically, the picture's still pretty weak, honestly. It really reflects that lack of positive earnings momentum we talked about. The stock's been trading mostly in a tight range, call it lower, still $48 to 66 recently. There's some minor support seen around the $45 to $50 level, which frankly isn't very strong. Doesn't offer much cushion if bad news hits. On the upside, resistance looks like it's around $0.68 to $2.72.
And the longer-term trend indicators still pointing downward?
Still pointing down, yeah. The moving averages tell that story pretty clearly. The shorter-term 50-day average is stuck below the longer-term 200-day average. For chart watchers, that's generally a bearish signal. Suggests recent bounces haven't been strong enough to reverse the overall decline. Things like the MCD indicator. Still in bearish territory. Momentum is weak. But the only neutral signal is the relative strength index, the RSI. It's kind of middling, between 44 and 49. So the stock isn't technically oversold yet. It's just drifting.
Okay, so weak fundamentals, weak technicals. But this pipeline of potential catalysts and dates coming up, that sounds like the perfect breeding ground for market chatter, for rumors, doesn't it? Which brings us to the really interesting part. What are these big speculative rumors that keep investors interested despite the data?
Well, the speculation is significant mainly because the core product, Antimony, is just so strategically important these days. Probably the biggest rumor making the rounds is about them potentially securing a major U.S. defense supply contract. Antimony is critical for things like ammunition, flame retardants, stuff the military uses a lot of.
And if that actually happened, why would that be such a game changer for them?
Stability, that's the key. A long-term defense contract means a reliable, high-volume customer. It would help insulate them from the crazy swings in the spot commodity market and potentially give them the stable revenue base they desperately need to fix those negative margins. It could be transformative. Second big area of chatter is around batteries. There's persistent talk about potential collaborations with battery manufacturers, specifically for developing antimony-based energy storage, so non-lithium battery tech.
Ah, okay. That taps right into the huge energy transition story, the whole move towards alternative battery chemistries.
Exactly. If they could carve out a real niche in that sector, suddenly their valuation isn't just based on being a small miner. They become viewed more like a technology enabler, potentially justifying a much higher valuation.
Makes sense. What else? Any operational rumors tied to those supply deals you mentioned earlier?
Yes, that's the third one. Ongoing talk about restarting or maybe even expanding their Madero smelter down in Mexico. This would be the logical next step. If those feedstock procurement efforts from the summer are successful,
Hmm.
if they can process more ore themselves internally, that could drastically improve their margins. And maybe a fourth whisper, though less defined, is just general talk of interest from a larger mining company, maybe looking to take a stake just to secure access to that antimony supply. Strategic positioning.
Okay, so defense contract, battery partnership, smelter expansion, potential M&A interest. Any one of those, if true, could make that $5.6 million loss seem pretty insignificant, couldn't it?
Absolutely. The potential impact is huge. But, as you said, there are still just rumors at this point, unconfirmed.
Right. So let's bring it all together. A comprehensive risk assessment. If you, the listener, are considering this, what are the main dangers you need to be acutely aware of?
Okay, three big ones jump out. First, we've hit on it a few times. The going concern risk, the history of losses, the negative cash flow. It creates a real documented risk about their ability to continue operating long-term without finding more money or achieving profitability fast. Second, and tied to that, is the dilution risk. It's significant. They already raised that $17.6 million by selling stock, diluting existing owners. And there's more potential dilution baked in, think executive stock options, restricted stock units that might need shareholder approval. And frankly, if the margins don't improve, they'll likely have to sell more stock in the future just to keep the lights on. So you're betting that good news arrives before dilution eats away too much value. And third, you have the external risks. They are highly dependent on volatile commodity prices, antimony, silver, gold. Plus, there are always operational risks and potential geopolitical issues, especially managing operations and supply chains in Mexico.
Okay, substantial risks. What about the big institutional players? Are major investment banks covering this? Are big funds buying in, signaling confidence, or are they staying away?
Mostly staying away, it seems. There's a real lack of coverage or official ratings from the major brokerages. That generally signals low institutional interest or visibility, which often means the stock isn't very liquid, harder to buy or sell large amounts without moving the price. And it makes the price much more susceptible to shifts in retail investor sentiment. And, those rumors we just talked about, it was not a stock driven by broad institutional agreement right now. So putting it all together, the really weak operational fundamentals measured against the admittedly very large potential scale of these catalysts, based purely on the available information, the overall rating has to be low. We'd put it at a 2 out of 10.
2 out of 10. That's a pretty clear signal. So what does that mean in terms of an investment approach for someone listening? Long-term hold, short-term trade.
Yeah, a 210 is low. The straightforward advice here is this stock looks not suitable as a long-term investment right now. The fundamental weaknesses, the consistent losses, that ongoing dilution risk. It's just too much uncertainty for a buy-and-hold approach based on current facts. Really, the only way to potentially play this is through highly speculative, event-driven trading, focusing specifically on those upcoming dates in Q4 we outlined. But even then, the current technical momentum is weak, so you're not trading chart patterns. You're essentially betting on specific news releases, earnings, capital market events, or concrete news about supply chain improvements or those big rumors.
Okay, so let's summarize that core conflict for you, the listener. You've got the stark contrast. On one side, a critical minerals company, yes, but one showing persistent losses, negative unit economics, burning cash, a shaky foundation. On the other side, potentially transformative speculative catalysts, huge possibilities like defense contracts, battery tech partnerships, operational expansions. And these possibilities are clustered around key reporting dates and market events happening very soon.
And that really leaves us with the final crucial question you need to ask yourself. It's a bit provocative, perhaps. Given that weak operational base, given the dilution that's already happened and might continue, just how big would one of those unconfirmed rumors, let's say, landing that major defense contract, actually have to be? How much positive impact would it need to have to truly override years of operational losses and justify the risk of further dilution that shareholders are carrying? That's the real gamble here. That's the fundamental trade-off baked into this company at this exact moment.
That really frames the decision, doesn't it? The potential reward versus the documented risk. Well, thank you for joining us for this analysis today. We hope breaking it down like this helps you look critically at your own sources and make a well-informed choice. We'll catch you next time on Investing Talk Podcast.